Welcome to Isoye Campus. Isoye simply means good memory. For you to have good memory, you have to understand things. See, when I was in school, I did a lot of cramming so that I could pass exams. I see this as a big problem especially with Nigerian students. A lot of Nigerian students have to cram so they can just, pass exams. This is the problem that I'm trying to solve. Here, you don't have to cram anything to remember or to pass your exams. So that is why I'm going to try my best to break things down in the simplest possible way so that you'll be able to easily remember things and then, ace your exams. So welcome back to biology class. Today we'll be talking about the differences between plants and animals. Between plants and animals. Now, in the previous class, we talked about plants and animals being living things, right? They are living things, and we talked about the characteristics of living things with a code which we called Mr. Niger CAD. In this class, we are going to look at the two groups of living things. These are basically the two categories or the two things under living things. I mean, plants and animals. So, what are the basic differences between these two? Although they are both living things, however, they do not carry out their activities the same way. There are some things that are present in plants that are absent in animals, and vice versa. So let's look at some of those things. So let's look at plants. So for plants cannot move from one place to another. Look at, I don't know if you've seen plants around, they can probably only move parts of their body, probably in response to wind or sun or stuff like that, but they cannot literally move from point A to point B. It is not possible. If they grew here, this is where they stay throughout their life cycle or throughout their lifetime. Let me put it that way. So, like I said, plants cannot move from one point to another. So they cannot move. They can't move. If at all they have to move, they only move parts of their body. Maybe the leaves. Yeah, the leaves and maybe the branches. Yes, leaves and branches. So another thing you need to know is that they manufacture their own food. They manufacture their own food. That is why we call them heterotrophs. Sorry, autotrophs. That's why we call them autotrophs. I'm sorry, not heterotrophs, autotrophs. They manufacture their own food. They are called producers or autotrophs. They're called producers or autotrophs. So what are autotrophs? Autotrophs, they produce their own food with inorganic substances such as sunlight. Right? Such as sunlight. Now, another thing you need to know about plants is that unlike animals, they don't have excretory, or let me say specialized excretory or special excretory organs. No, they don't have the kidney, liver, they don't have kidney, liver, anus, and all of those things. They don't have that. However, when you go deep into plant studies, right, you are going to discover that they have things like stomata, lenticels that they use for excretion, so to say. So, moving on, growth of plants, growth is indefinite and terminal. Growth is indefinite, meaning that they keep on growing throughout their lifetime, right? However, some of their parts actually stop growing, but their growth is usually indefinite and terminal. You get, unlike humans that, for example, say humans stop growing, maybe the brain stops developing at 25, or the reproductive organ of a male stops growing at a certain age. For plants, their growth is indefinite. They keep on growing until they actually die. So another thing you need to consider is they store carbohydrates. As starch. I'm not really going to dwell on this here in this class. However, when we go deep into plant study, into the study of plants, we're going to extensively discuss about this. Another thing is their response to stimulus is slow. Response to stimulus is slow. unlike humans or animals, that if you tap, it quickly respond. You get? It's not like that for plants. Lastly, just as they don't have special excretory organs, they also don't have special respiratory organs. So, like I said earlier, when we start talking about plants extensively, we are going to study the things that they use for excretion, respiration, and all of that. Like I mentioned earlier, stomata and lenticels. Now, let's quickly talk about the difference animals. We are talking about, the difference between plants and animals. So let's quickly discuss animals under this category, just as we have done for plants. Now, let's discuss animals. Let's discuss animals. We said plants cannot move from point A to B. Animals can. You, as a human being, you can move from wherever you are. You can move from your living room to your sitting room to the kitchen or wherever. So animals can move. Animals can move. Another thing is, animals have, there is presence of special system or organs. Presence of special respiratory and excretory organs. So in humans, for example, you have kidney, you have liver, you have your bladder, you have anus. For this, you have lungs, you have your nose, you have your diaphragm, and all of these things, right? These are the things you use for respiration, and these are the things you use for excretion. So another thing is, response to stimulus is fast. Humans respond quickly to stimulus, right? So in plants, we said the growth is indefinite and terminal, but for animals, just like I mentioned earlier, for animals, growth is definite. Growth is definite. Growth is definite. And in all parts of the body, in all parts of the body, growth is definite and in all parts of the body. This simply means that, just like I mentioned earlier, some parts of the body stop growing at a certain age. I used the brain as an example. Science believes that the human brain stops developing for males at 25, right? The brain does not attain full maturity or full development until 25 years of age for males. It is believed that for females, they achieve the full development at 22 or thereabout. But that is what this statement simply means. Growth is definite. Now, animals store carbohydrates as lastly, besides plants are autotrophs. Animals are what? Heterotrophs. Hetero, heterotrophs. So basically, these are the differences between plants and animals. I'm limiting this to secondary school level or under-level students in university. So we'll talk extensively about animals and plants in forthcoming classes. So please subscribe to this channel, share to other students like you who find it very hard to understand things. I believe that I have done justice to this topic, and I believe that you understand it and you don't have to cram. So just to refresh your memory, animals can move, plants cannot. Plants do not have special excretory or respiratory systems. Don't worry, in this video I'm going to draw a table between this. So in animals, response to stimulus is fast, while in plants it is slow. Growth is indefinite and in all parts of the body for animals, but for plants it is not so. Animals, we usually store their carbohydrate. Plants do otherwise. They store their carbohydrate as what? Starch. So animals are heterotrophs, plants are autotrophs. Autotrophs make their own food, they produce their own food. I hope you understand. Please subscribe to this channel. See you in the next class.